I sat there staring at the old tin cookie box in my hands, my fingers trembling as I counted the crumpled bills and loose change for what felt like the 100th time. $565. After 8 months of sacrificing everything, I was finally close to my goal. My 12-year-old son, Dylan, had no idea what I had been planning for his 13th birthday next month. The PlayStation 5 he had been dreaming about was within reach. I could already picture his face lighting up when he unwrapped it. But as I held that money, something in my gut told me this story was about to take a devastating turn that would test every ounce of strength I had as a mother. Truok ki bat jau kau chuyen hai moi khan, gia chobiet ho jang sem tu jau van han, like nuban kung tung hisin vikon. Hai subscribe je theo doin hung kau chuyen vesukien kuang kuan goi me. Va bai gio hai kung toi kwai vethang, hai nam goai ki toi juara kwet jin thai joy kwok joy. My name is Isla, and at 32, I had been navigating life as a single mother for 3 years since my divorce. Every morning at 6:30, I would drop Dylan off at his middle school before heading to my job as a pharmacy technician at CVS. The $16 an hour I earned barely covered our basic needs, but I was determined to make it work. Our small 2-bedroom apartment in Sacramento cost $1,200 a month, and after utilities, groceries, and Dylan's school expenses, there was rarely anything left over. Dylan was everything to me. At 12 years old, he was kind, funny, and obsessed with video games. The problem was, we only had his father's old Xbox 360 from 2010, and it was showing its age. The controller had stick drift, and half the games his friends played were not even available on the ancient system. Every day after school, Dylan would tell me about the amazing games his classmates were playing on their PlayStation 5s, and I could see the disappointment in his eyes when he realized we could not afford one. The turning point came in February when I picked Dylan up from his friend Marcus's house. As we drove home, Dylan was unusually quiet. When I asked what was wrong, he finally opened up about feeling left out. His friends had been planning to play the new Spider-Man game together online, but Dylan could not join because we did not have a PlayStation 5. He tried to hide it, but I could see how much it hurt him to be excluded from something his friends took for granted. That night, after Dylan went to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a calculator and a notebook. A PlayStation 5 cost $499 plus tax, and maybe a game or two would bring the total to around $600. If I saved $75 a month for 8 months, I could surprise him with one for his 13th birthday in October. It seemed impossible on my tight budget, but I was determined to make it happen. The next morning, I started developing my saving strategy. I would need to find ways to earn extra money and cut expenses wherever possible. First, I spoke with my manager about picking up additional weekend shifts. The pharmacy was often understaffed on Saturdays and Sundays, so they were happy to have me work extra hours. Those additional shifts would give me an extra $150 to $200 per month before taxes. For expenses, I became ruthless about cutting costs. Instead of buying lunch during my break, I started packing peanut butter sandwiches every day. I canceled our Netflix subscription and told Dylan we would just use the free apps with commercials. I began walking to work when the weather was decent, saving $15 a week on gas. Every evening, I would search Facebook Marketplace for items I could sell, like old clothes books and household items we no longer needed. The most important part of my plan was the cookie tin. It had belonged to my grandmother, and I kept it on the top shelf of my bedroom closet. Every day when I came home from work, I would empty my pockets of loose change and add any extra bills I had managed to save. Sometimes it was just 50 cents. Other days it might be $5 or $10 from tips customers gave me at the pharmacy. Every penny counted toward Dylan's dream. What Dylan did not know was how much I was sacrificing for this goal. There were nights when I was exhausted from working double shifts, but I pushed through because I could picture his joy on his birthday. I stopped going out with my coworkers after work, claiming I was too tired, when really I could not afford to spend money on drinks or dinner. When my friends invited me to movies or shopping trips, I always had an excuse ready. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal, when inside, I was constantly calculating and planning. By the end of February, I had managed to save $78, $3 more than my target. I carefully recorded the amount in a small notebook I kept hidden with the tin. Seeing that first month's progress gave me the motivation I needed to continue. This was really happening. Dylan was going to get his PlayStation 5, and he would never know about the months of sacrifice that made it possible. March brought its own challenges and victories. I had picked up 2 extra weekend shifts, which meant working 12 days straight without a break. My feet ached constantly from standing at the pharmacy counter, and I was surviving on 4 hours of sleep most nights. But every time I deposited money into the cookie tin, I felt a surge of pride. By the end of March, I had saved $72, a bit less than planned, because Dylan had gotten sick with strep throat and needed antibiotics that our insurance did not fully cover. April was better. I had discovered that some of our regular customers at the pharmacy were incredibly generous. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who picked up her heart medications every month, started tipping me $5 each visit after I helped her understand her new prescription schedule. A young father named James gave me $10 when I stayed late to fill his daughter's emergency inhaler prescription. These small acts of kindness from strangers were helping me reach my goal, and I was grateful beyond words. The most successful month was May, when I managed to save $85. I had sold my winter coat from college on Facebook Marketplace for $40, and a weekend shift had been particularly busy, resulting in extra hours at time and a half pay. I was ahead of schedule, which gave me a cushion for the expensive summer months ahead. During this time, my relationship with my older sister Sarah had become more complicated. Sarah was 35, married to a bank manager named Robert, and they had an 11-year-old son named Bryce. Their financial situation was much more comfortable than mine. They lived in a 4-bedroom house in the suburbs, and Sarah often posted pictures on social media of expensive toys and gadgets she bought for Bryce. Whenever we got together for family dinners, Sarah would make subtle comments about my parenting choices. She would suggest that I was being too protective of Dylan, or that I needed to teach him that life was not always fair. When Dylan mentioned wanting certain things, Sarah would give me looks that suggested I was spoiling him by even considering his wishes. It was frustrating, but I tried to keep the peace for the sake of family harmony. What Sarah did not understand was that every decision I made was carefully calculated. When Dylan asked for a $20 game, I did not just say no randomly. I considered our budget, our upcoming expenses, and whether it was something that would truly make him happy versus a momentary want. Sarah saw my caution as being overly strict, but I knew it was necessary for our survival. The summer months tested my resolve like nothing else. June brought higher electricity bills due to air conditioning, and I had to be creative about staying cool without running up our utility costs. We spent a lot of time at the public library, which was free and air-conditioned. Dylan thought we were just expanding his reading habits, but really, I was trying to save money on cooling our apartment. July was particularly challenging because Dylan's birthday was getting closer, and he was dropping more hints about what he wanted. He had seen a commercial for the new PlayStation 5 bundle with 2 controllers and 3 games, and he mentioned how amazing it would be to have friends over to play together. Each comment was like a dagger to my heart, because I wanted so badly to tell him that his dream was about to come true, but I also lived in constant fear that something would go wrong with my plan. By the end of August, I was exhausted but triumphant. My little notebook showed a total of $530 saved over 6 months. I was so close to my goal that I could almost taste victory. Dylan had started his 7th grade year and was more excited than ever about his upcoming 13th birthday. He had been dropping hints about having a party with his friends, and I was secretly planning the surprise of a lifetime. The first week of September brought unexpected overtime opportunities when two of my coworkers called in sick with the flu. I worked 60 hours that week, which was brutal on my body, but incredible for my savings goal. When I counted the money in the cookie tin on September 10th, I had $565. I only needed $35 more, and I still had 5 weeks until Dylan's birthday. I remember sitting on my bedroom floor that night, holding the tin, and feeling overwhelmed with emotion. For 8 months, I had sacrificed everything for this moment. I had skipped meals, worked myself to exhaustion, and said no to every social invitation. But it was all worth it because I was about to give my son the one thing he wanted most in the world. I had never felt more proud of myself as a mother. October 5th was the day I had been waiting for since February. I had arranged for my neighbor to watch Dylan after school, telling her I had a dentist appointment. Instead, I drove to Best Buy with my cookie tin full of carefully saved money. Walking through those doors felt like the culmination of 8 months of hard work and sacrifice. The PlayStation 5 section was in the back corner of the store, and my heart was pounding as I approached it. There they were, the sleek white consoles I had been dreaming about for so long. I chose a bundle that included the System 2 controllers and Spider-Man Miles Morales, knowing it was exactly what Dylan had been hoping for. When the cashier rang up the total as $612, including tax, I carefully counted out my bills and coins, using every last dollar I had saved. Carrying that PlayStation 5 box to my car felt surreal. I had actually done it. Through sheer determination and sacrifice, I had managed to save enough money to buy my son his dream gift. I hid the box in my bedroom closet, wrapped in an old blanket, and started planning the perfect surprise party for October 15th. The following week, Sarah invited our family over for dinner on October 12th. I was so excited about my accomplishment that I decided to bring the PlayStation 5 with me to show her. I wanted my sister to see that despite our financial struggles, I was capable of making Dylan's dreams come true. I carefully loaded the box into my trunk and drove to her suburban house. Sarah seemed genuinely impressed when I revealed what I had bought for Dylan. She examined the box and commented on how expensive it was, asking how I had managed to afford it. I proudly told her about my 8-month savings plan, the extra shifts I had worked, and all the sacrifices I had made. For once, Sarah seemed to respect what I had accomplished as a single mother. She even said she was proud of me for being so dedicated to Dylan's happiness. During dinner, Dylan and Bryce played video games in the living room while the adults talked in the kitchen. Sarah's husband Robert was impressed by my savings discipline and mentioned that he wished more people had my level of financial planning. I felt validated and proud finally receiving the recognition I had been craving from my family. Sarah offered to keep the PlayStation 5 at her house until Dylan's birthday since she had more storage space, and Dylan would never think to look there. It seemed like the perfect plan. Sarah's house was larger, and Dylan rarely went into their guest room where she could hide the box. I would pick it up on the morning of October 15th and have everything ready for Dylan's surprise party that afternoon. I trusted my sister completely, and leaving the PlayStation 5 with her seemed like the logical choice. The next 2 days passed slowly as I finalized preparations for Dylan's party. I had invited his 3 closest friends and planned his favorite meal of hamburgers and chocolate cake. Dylan had no idea what was coming, though he kept asking what I had gotten him for his birthday. I just smiled and told him he would have to wait and see. October 14th, the day before Dylan's 13th birthday, I drove to Sarah's house to pick up the PlayStation 5. I was practically vibrating with excitement, knowing that in less than 24 hours, Dylan would be unwrapping the gift he had dreamed about for months. I rang Sarah's doorbell with a huge smile on my face, ready to collect my son's present. But when Sarah opened the door, her expression was strange. She looked uncomfortable, and avoided making eye contact with me. Before I could ask what was wrong, I heard the unmistakable sounds of a PlayStation 5 coming from the living room. My stomach dropped as I realized what I was hearing. Someone was playing the console I had bought for Dylan. I pushed past Sarah and walked into the living room where I found Bryce sitting on the couch with a PlayStation 5 controller in his hands. On the television screen was Spider-Man Miles Morales, the exact game I had bought for Dylan's birthday. The white console sat prominently beneath the TV, no longer in its box, clearly set up as a permanent fixture in Sarah's entertainment center. My vision went blurry as the reality of the situation hit me. Sarah had given away Dylan's birthday present to her own son. 8 months of sacrifice, 8 months of working double shifts and skipping meals, and saying no to every social invitation had been for nothing. The PlayStation 5 I had saved every penny to buy was now being enjoyed by my nephew, while my own son had no idea his dreams had been stolen. When I confronted Sarah, her response was even more shocking than her actions. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "My son deserves it more than Dylan does. You can save up again if you really want to get him one." She said it so casually, as if my months of sacrifice meant nothing. As if Dylan's happiness was less important than Bryce's immediate gratification. I demanded she give me back the PlayStation 5, immediately explaining that it was Dylan's birthday present, and I had worked for 8 months to afford it. Sarah just shrugged and said that Bryce was older and more mature than Dylan, so he would appreciate the gift more. She actually had the nerve to suggest that I was overreacting, and that Dylan would not even notice if his birthday gift was delayed. The argument escalated quickly. Sarah claimed that since she made more money than me, she understood the value of expensive electronics better. She said that giving such an expensive gift to Dylan would spoil him and teach him to expect things he could not afford. Her words cut deep because they revealed how little she understood about my situation and how much I had sacrificed for this moment. When I refused to back down, Sarah threatened to cut me out of the family if I continued making a scene. She said I was being dramatic and selfish, that I should be happy Bryce was enjoying the gift, instead of being bitter about it. She actually suggested that watching Bryce play would be almost as good as Dylan having his own console. Standing in Sarah's living room, watching my nephew play with the PlayStation 5 I had bought for my son, I felt something shift inside me. The months of exhaustion, sacrifice, and careful planning had led to this moment of betrayal, and I realized I had a choice. I could accept Sarah's dismissal and walk away defeated, or I could fight for what was rightfully Dylan's. I took a deep breath and told Sarah that she had exactly 24 hours to return the PlayStation 5, or I would take action she would not like. She laughed and said I had no power in this situation, that possession was 9/10 of the law. But Sarah had underestimated me. 8 months of working multiple jobs and sacrificing everything for my son had taught me that I was stronger than I had ever imagined. First, I called our parents. Sarah and I were both adults, but our mother had always been the family mediator, and I knew she would be horrified by what Sarah had done. When I explained the situation, there was a long pause before our mother said she was deeply disappointed in Sarah's behavior. Our father was even more direct, saying that theft was theft, regardless of whether it happened within the family. Next, I contacted Sarah's husband Robert at his bank. I explained what had happened and provided details about my 8-month savings plan, including the notebook where I had recorded every deposit into my cookie tin. Robert was mortified. He had been present when I proudly explained my savings strategy at dinner just 2 days earlier, and he knew exactly how much this meant to Dylan and me. I also took photographs of the PlayStation 5 set up in Sarah's living room and saved all the text messages she had sent me dismissing my concerns. If necessary, I was prepared to file a police report for theft. The PlayStation 5 was worth over $600, which made it a felony in our state. I was not bluffing about taking legal action. The pressure from multiple directions began to work. Our parents called Sarah, repeatedly expressing their shame about her actions. Robert came home from work early and had what I assumed was a very uncomfortable conversation with his wife. Even some of Sarah's neighbors had heard our argument and were asking questions about what was happening. By 6 o'clock that evening, Sarah called me. Her voice was different, deflated, and defensive. She said she had been thinking about the situation and realized she might have acted hastily. I told her that thinking about it was not enough. I needed my son's PlayStation 5 returned immediately in its original box, with all accessories and games. Sarah tried to negotiate, suggesting that maybe Bryce could keep it for a few more days and then give it to Dylan as a late birthday present. I shut that down immediately. Dylan's birthday was the next day, and he was getting his present on time, exactly as I had planned. There would be no delays, no compromises, and no shared custody of a gift I had bought with my own money. The final turning point came when Robert arrived at my apartment that evening, with the PlayStation 5 still in its original box. He apologized profusely for his wife's behavior and assured me that Bryce understood the console was going to its rightful owner. Robert even included a $25 Best Buy gift card as an apology, saying he was embarrassed by the whole situation. October 15th arrived, and Dylan's 13th birthday party was everything I had dreamed it would be. When he unwrapped the PlayStation 5, his face lit up with pure joy. He threw his arms around me and said it was the best birthday present he had ever received. His friends were amazed, and they spent the entire afternoon playing together exactly as Dylan had imagined. Watching my son's happiness, I realized that Sarah's betrayal had taught me something important about family and boundaries. Not everyone who shares your blood will support your dreams or respect your sacrifices, but that does not mean you give up or accept less than you deserve. Sometimes, standing up for yourself and your children requires uncomfortable confrontations and difficult decisions. The relationship with Sarah never fully recovered. She eventually apologized, but it felt forced and incomplete. More importantly, I learned to trust my instincts about people and situations. Dylan never knew about the drama surrounding his gift. He just knew that his mother had made his birthday dream come true. Looking back, those 8 months of sacrifice were about more than buying a PlayStation 5. They were about proving to myself that I could set a goal and achieve it regardless of obstacles. They taught Dylan that dreams are possible with hard work and determination, even when money is tight. And they showed me that a mother's love is fierce enough to overcome betrayal and fight for what matters most. Sometimes the people closest to you test your strength the most, but that is when you discover just how fierce a mother's love can be. Have you ever had to fight for something you worked hard for? Share your story in the comments below. If this story reminded you of your own struggles as a parent, please like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories about family sacrifice and standing up for what's right. And if you know someone who could use some encouragement about fighting for their dreams, please share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your hard work and dedication as a parent never goes unnoticed, even when it feels like the world is against you.